vision, principles, goals, policies, and strategies, and focusing particularly on certain elements that were discussed and commented on during the last phase of development. So as Council is likely aware, we take 5 key elements of what makes up a community, in this case, social, cultural, governance, economic, and built and natural environment components of what makes up a community, and we distill them into different parts of a plan such as this. In this case, that translated into topical areas for which the plan is organized, including general growth and development, residential, commercial, industrial, recreation, education, and institutional servicing infrastructure and environment, transportation, and implementation components.
Been recording, but it hasn't been live streamed. So do we have to keep building the live stream now, or is that also tonight? We're just looking at that right now. Yeah, so the live stream, I can pull it up now. Okay, just for, sorry to the viewing audience out there on our live stream, we just learned that we didn't have live stream right from the get-go, so we learned that now, and for clarity and transparency and accountability, we will resume the meeting right from the very beginning, and so I apologize for any confusion, but I will call the meeting to order. And I will ask if anybody has any items that on today's agenda give rise to pecuniary or conflict of interest. Please indicate if that is the case. There's no indication that there is any members of council that have any conflict of interest or pecuniary interest with regards to any items today, so that will be noted in the agenda in the minutes. We have additions or adoptions to the agenda. So we have Councillor Avery made a suggestion to, you want to go ahead and make a suggestion to your addition?
Yes, Your Worship, my suggestion is 12.3, the closed session, to invite Mr. Jack Van Ryan back in so council can meet with Jack to discuss further some of the questions. And I would like all the council to hear the questions that I have to ask, not just me asking Jack privately.
Okay, so the intent of that is for Councillor Avery to ask Mr. Van Ryan questions and have the whole conversation with all the members of council present then. All right. And then Councillor Holm?
Would like to ask that when we get to items 12.2, that we ask for it to be strictly a meeting with council and that all staff members leave the meeting at that time for those discussions with the lawyer.
Okay. All right. And then the motion for the amended agenda is put forward by Councillor Holm. So we have a motion for the agenda as amended on the floor. And do we have any discussion? Councillor Lloyd?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't agree with inviting somebody to the meeting at the last minute. I'd like to wait till the next meeting, so I'll be voting against the addition.
Okay. Any other discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, we have, so we have, okay, all in favor. Okay, we have Councillor Holm, Chapman, Simpson, and Avery in favor and opposed. Myself, Councillor Lloyd, and Councillor Paul's opposed. Okay. And then we have the first item of business is the public hearing. So I will open the public hearing on Town Plan Bylaw 786-P-909-20 and invite Spencer Croyle to introduce this.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to you and council. Due to the breadth and depth of the town plan that makes up the proposed bylaw 786-P-08-20, we do have a fairly comprehensive presentation that myself, Madeline Baldwin from the Oldman River Regional Services Commission, and Melanie Messier, our town municipal planning intern, will be presenting to you this evening. The presentation will be made up of a brief discussion of legislative requirements for the town plan, our process as to how we got here tonight, the engagement outcomes and influence they've had on the plan itself, a brief overview of the plan, highlights from the last round of engagement that helped to provide additional information for the policies and strategies that make up a part of the plan, and next steps. With that, I'll hand it off to Madeline Baldwin for a brief discussion on legislative requirements.
There's a hierarchy of plans and documents that guide land use planning in Alberta. We have the Municipal Government Act that provides direction for what can be in an MDP, as well as at the regional level, the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan. The town plan in Coaldale, which is what we're calling the Municipal Development Plan, provides direction for future land use and guides the creation of more detailed plans, such as area structure plans, area redevelopment plans, outline plans, as well as the subdivision and development process. So it's an important document that guides lower levels of planning. So the MGA requires that all municipalities over a certain size of population have a municipal development plan to guide the growth and change within their community. It also specifies what must be in an MDP and then what could be in an MDP. So the town plan is a comprehensive document that provides a vision for growth and change. It includes policies that address residential, commercial, and industrial development, recreational education and educational and institutional goals, as well as infrastructure, servicing, transportation, and the environment. So the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan is built on the Alberta Land Stewardship Act, and it's a cumulative effects management plan. So it's about balancing the interactions of the environment, economic and social needs within southern Alberta. It provides some direction for land use planning in communities, specifically that land use is done efficiently and that over time we're minimizing the amount of new land that needs to be built on for development. So this relates to the density target that Spencer will talk about later, as well as policies around encouraging infill development and just how to manage and balance different land use conflicts. So throughout the town plan document, when it's noted that there's an alignment between this SSRP and the town plan policy, that's shown right in the document. That's all I'm going to say about legislative requirements.
So with regards to the process we've used to get to this point, Town Council approved 2 key documents that helped guide the variety of steps that were taken to get to this evening with the final draft plan before Council. First was a project charter, which is effectively a project management plan, approved by Council on October 22nd, 2018, and then a public participation plan that was approved by Council January 28th, 2019. There were a variety of phases and milestones that have led to this evening, all of which we can see on the screen. I won't read them all out, but getting from the start to the end result was focused on a variety of steps, such as gathering background information, preparing the public participation plan, developing a working group based on community members and local board and commission members, and then practicing all of the steps that were outlined in those types of documents and processes. So more to do with the project working group. That group, as council may recall, was made up of 6 members of the community selected by an open nomination process, public members of the Municipal Planning Commission and Subdivision and Development Appeal Board, and members of Town Council who participated as you wished. The mandate of the group was effectively to review and discuss project progress and help guide discussion around the development of the plan itself. The work carried out by the working group was undertaken over a series of meetings and through group surveys and the review and discussion of various types of information. There were certain adjustments that had to be made as COVID became more of a concern that had to be dealt with, but the work of the working group was integral to the development of the plan itself. In terms of highlights for the plan, the overall process did follow the project charter and the management plan. The public participation steps that were taken followed the public participation plan. We had more than 1,700 points of contact with members of the community who wished to provide feedback that helped shape the plan, and the plan was completed on budget. So with that, I'll hand it off to Melanie for a brief discussion on engagement outcomes and their influence on the plan itself.
So over the span of the town plan project, engagement took place at various points in the process. Overall, over 1,700 points of contact were made with residents. Phase 1 focused on understanding the perspectives of residents on subjects including community values, guiding principles, and highest priorities. So during this phase, respondents identified what they liked most in their neighborhoods as well as areas of concern. Phase 2 focused on checking the draft and ensuring that all components of the plan aligned with the values of respondents. Also, it gave an opportunity for residents to engage with specific policies and strategies within the draft. Engagement influenced all aspects of the plan, including the vision, principles, goals, policies, and strategies. The feedback collected helped to shape the plan and inform adaptations to the working draft. So feedback from both Phase 1 and Phase 2 was reflective of Coaldale's demographic profile and represented members of the community that have resided in Coaldale for lengths of time ranging from 5 years to greater than 20 years. So the foundation of Phase 1 included identifying community elements that were most valued by respondents. These elements included the built environment, natural environment, governance, social and cultural life, and the economy. The elements that ranked highest among these included social and cultural life, the economy, and the natural environment. Following this, they were asked to rank priority guiding principles that were associated with each individual element. So the top ranking guiding principles included focusing on active modes of transportation, reducing impacts of waste, promoting financial responsibility and responsiveness, encouraging education and continued partnership with school divisions, and focusing on development in the downtown. So the vision that was created for the plan was a direct result of engagement in Phase 1. For the record, the vision reads as, Coaldale has a friendly small town atmosphere where residents connect with each other through multiple recreation, social, and cultural opportunities. Coaldale is a thriving community that supports existing businesses and attracts economic opportunities. And as Coaldale continues to grow and welcome new residents, the town will be known for a variety of housing options, efficient and environmentally conscious infrastructure, and a safe and accepting community. So for the guiding principles in phase 2 of the vision that was presented to participants, it received a favorable response of 29% in strong agreeance and 51% in agreeance. The guiding principles that were established in phase 1 of the town plan received a favorable response of 39% in strong agreeance and 47% in agreeance. And lastly, the guiding principles that were ranked by level of importance were Principle 1, foster a caring, inclusive, and safe community as the most important, was ranked as most important, and Principle 5, deliver accountability and transparency, ranks second most important by participants. And that's all I have.
So just a brief overview of the plan itself, built on what Melanie has just gone through with the vision, principles, goals, policies, and strategies. The plan was distilled from the idea that there are 5 overarching elements that make up community, and those are shown on the screen now. So that's social, cultural, governance, economic, and environmental, both built and natural environment aspects of a community. Those were distilled into the various parts of the plan that we can see on the screen right now, which include a variety of land uses, guided by a general growth and development section and leading into an implementation section that ensures the plan is effective and actionable as time goes on. The plan was developed with a number of maps to complement the variety of policies and strategies in place. So just very briefly, the first map shows areas for growth and areas for change, identifying areas where new development is likely to occur, new neighborhoods, and those generally align with the areas that were annexed in 2018. And areas for change include older established neighborhoods that don't have things such as architectural controls and other components to work through to manage change. Generally, that's going to be the older, much more well-established parts of the community that see change over time. There's also a brief highlight map including existing land uses, a map showing conceptual land uses, future land uses, that generally aligns with what was shown at the annexation proceedings that led up to the successful annexation of the majority of the lands on the west side of the screen and a little bit to the north on the screen in 2018. Additionally, we have a special places map that highlights all of the areas of Coaldale that are considered special to the community, such as the Birds of Prey Cemetery and Gem Museum, quads, sports fields, the Main Street area, and Eastview Park. And we also have a trails, parks, and open spaces map, just showing the variety of linear and passive and active green spaces and active modes transportation networks that make up the recreational and functional trails networks and open spaces in the community. And finally, we have a conceptual transportation map that shows existing major parts of our network and likely points for consideration in terms of future change and growth and development that would occur over time based on the growth patterns that we'll see into the future. A brief overview of the plan shows that by topic area, we have a very brief statement indicating what each topic area is intended to focus on. And most importantly for this evening, on the far right of the screen, we see on each of the number of tables we'll see on the slides this evening, stakeholder sentiment. So basically this captures a very, very brief summary version of what we captured out of the latest round of engagement, which included almost 500 responses to a survey and open houses that were held in August. So general growth and development are of course intended to manage growth and development generally. That was supported for the most part by feedback. Residential development was generally supported, the policies around residential development, with hesitancy regarding a diversity of housing and density options that were discussed previously by Madeline, and we'll go through that in a little bit more detail later on. Commercial components were generally supported with some hesitancy about neighborhood commercial areas, so we'll discuss that briefly as well. Industrial components were generally supported, as were recreational, educational, and institutional components, servicing infrastructure and environmental components, and the implementation section. There was one note on the transportation section indicating general hesitancy regarding a proposed policy to minimize driveways on major roads for peak functionality, and we'll discuss that again in a few moments. So again, speaking of efficient land use, if we think back to the commentary that Madeline provided on the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan and the need to recognize efficient land use is something that needs to be achieved based on provincial guidance, we'll start the discussion around the idea that Coaldale's average residential density is 5.1 units per acre. So to put that in context in terms of what that means to us, I'd like to briefly describe what density is in the sense of looking at it from a growth and development perspective. Generally, it's a unit of measure for the number of people per area or a number of dwellings per area. And by per unit of area, we mean acres or hectares or whatnot. Gross density is something that includes all of the public spaces, public right-of-way, and community spaces in a given neighborhood. So if you have gross density in a quarter section, you would say that density is however many homes you can fit into 160 acres, being the total area of a quarter section. So that includes streets and roads and parks and public facilities. Now, if we talk about net density, we're talking about just the private lots themselves. So however many lots you can fit into a given area. And so net density on a per quarter section basis is typically going to be 20 to 30% less in terms of total area, because that's how much land our roads take up. So you might be talking about the number of homes you can fit on 120 acres, for instance. And we'll show you what that means as we go on here with a brief description of density based on a neighborhood or a block in the community. So here we have 21st Avenue and 16th Street. The block size is about 5.5 acres. The private land area is about 3.5 acres. So the private land area is everything in red. That means the gross density, so all of the homes we can fit within the yellow rectangle, including roads and alleys and whatnot, is about 3.6 units per acre. Now, if we take net density and we only consider the number of units we can fit in the red rectangles, so not including roads and right-of-ways, we have about 5.76 units per acre. So net density is typically going to be higher, and that's what we talk about when we look at the South Saskatchewan plan and the goal of being 8 units per acre. We're talking about net density. So components of the built environment that impact density, whether it goes up or down, include lot dimensions, width and length, and the form of dwellings that are on those lots, so whether it's a single detached dwelling, manufactured dwelling, or multi-unit dwellings. Just from the start of the discussion, it's important to recognize what we don't mean by density and what we do mean by density. In this particular case, we don't mean low cost or low value housing. We don't mean only condominiums and skyscrapers. We don't mean that every block of every new neighborhood is very small lots and very small homes. But what we do mean and what we do intend is density as a choice, as a way of providing affordability for all purchase points, for all residents who will live in and make up a community. And it's important to recognize that density is an average made up of different parts of a neighborhood or a town. It's not typically going to focus on one particular finite area of a community, especially with a density target in mind. So just for contextual purposes, what I've done is gone through each neighborhood in the community and provided rough high and low numbers for the highest density and lowest density we have in each part of town to provide a bit of context for what density we're at now and what we mean and what we hope for in the future in terms of density as a way of achieving efficient land use and delivering quality housing options to current and future residents. So here we have the Kate Andrews neighborhood. The yellow area is about 120 acres. And for net density, so that's just homes on their own, we have a net density here of about 5 units an acre, with the highest density in the southwest corner of the neighborhood at almost 10 units an acre, and that's seniors' homes, I believe, or homes for 55-plus individuals in the southwest of this part of the community. And the lowest density we have is about 4.3 acres in the northeast of the community. Large lots, very deep lots, so more than 110 or 120 feet deep, and they'll decrease density in the neighborhood. Next, we have Garden Grove, and for the low here, we have about 6 units per acre on the far east side, and then of course on the south side facing the railway tracks, everyone knows of the well-designed townhome style units facing the railway track. Those are about 11.5 units an acre. So that's the range that we would have in Garden Grove. In Eastview Park, we go from about 5.3 units per acre to 12 units per acre, and that's including the condominiums that you see when you come in off of 8th Street on the west side of the road off of 8th Street coming off of Highway 3. Parkside, which is a partial calculation based on the fact the neighborhood isn't fully developed, has a low density of about 8.7 units an acre and a high density of about 14 units per acre. Eastview around Jenny Emery School has a low density of about 5.8 units an acre and a high density of about 15 units an acre. And it's important to note on the 15 unit per acre portion of this neighborhood, we're talking about the seniors' homes, the duplexes and multi-unit homes that are south of the Sunny South Lodge. So it's important to note that higher density dwellings can also mean dwellings that are suitable for people in different stages of life based on how much time or money they have to maintain their properties, or if they only live in a certain place for a part of the year, for instance. Cottonwood neighborhood has a low density of about 2.7 units an acre, and that's partially because of safety factor with the golf course being on the far west side of that neighborhood. We have deeper lots that provide usable rear yards and some safety from errant golf shots, as happens from time to time. And the high density in the Cottonwood area would be about 6 units per acre. Westgate and Waterfront Landing provide a low density of about 5.2 units an acre with Waterfront Landing and the 2 cul-de-sacs there, and then the high in this area would be about 8 units per acre with the homes surrounding the green strip in Westgate. So that brings us to our current average, which is 5.1 units. And as you can see, that was made up of a whole bunch of different density ranges in different neighborhoods. So it's certainly not to say that all neighborhoods are 5.1 units or they're lower or higher. It's the average of the variety of houses that we have available in Coaldale today. Density matters, and it matters to increase density as the province has recognized and as we are therefore required to recognize at the municipal level because of short, mid, and long-term costs. The variety of housing options that different levels of density help to maintain, and related impacts, such as to transportation and safety and things of that nature. So some easy ways to increase density would be secondary suites, something that's already permitted in town. Those types of things can be an easy path to increasing our community density. From a cost perspective, typical lot widths of, for argument's sake, 12 to 20 meters can show the difference in cost short, mid, and long term for different levels of density in different neighborhoods. Using a 2018 number of an average of about $1,350 per linear meter of roadway, and that's including utilities, sidewalks, and the roadway itself. We have costs that would range for a 40-foot wide lot at about $16,000 per linear meter to almost $30,000 per linear meter for a 66-foot wide lot. So it just shows the variety of costs that go into building and maintaining different types of lots and housing. Now, as mentioned previously, it's certainly not about smallest is best, it's about finding balance. And balance is key because it helps to ensure that all purchase points and all different types of family units and individuals that make up a community have access to quality housing. And it also speaks to rental and ownership preference as well. So the variety of housing types and forms that serve all residents in town has been increasing over time. In 2006, 80% of homes were single detached dwellings, and in 2016, 77% were single detached. There are a few policies that focus on ensuring there's a variety of dwelling types and forms available for the community. And that's reflected in the fact that we're already achieving that. So it's certainly not looking at this from an idealistic perspective. It's recognizing that we're just trying to continue what's already been achieved. So looking at the specific policies themselves, I've highlighted in the green rectangle the policies that were of particular interest and that we've just spoken about at length regarding density and housing variety. 2.12 indicates that an average residential density of 8 units per developable or net acre should be worked towards over time. And 2.11a is a little bit more specific in saying that no individual block in any new neighborhoods should be under 5 units per acre. So that's recognizing that you can have very large lots and larger homes on certain blocks, and then you can have a variety of higher density homes and lots on different blocks of a neighborhood. So it's about that average. It's not in particular about one block or the other, but there is benefit to setting a minimum in this particular case. And there's also talk about setting density targets and recognizing that they're achieved by a development of a diversity of housing. And that's where we mentioned that we're already achieving that housing diversity as per the Statistics Canada information that shows we're increasing in housing diversity over time. There's also some commentary about commercial hubs in residential areas and whether they make sense. So as the community grows, the intent is certainly not for a commercial node in a new neighborhood to compete with or cause any negative impact to a special commercial area such as Main Street or our highway commercial areas. The idea is that each of these areas serves its own purpose. So in a residential setting, the idea with neighborhood commercial is to meet the daily needs of residents on a smaller scale. And so again, we have policies that relate to that point up on the screen in the green box. And the current policies indicate that dwellings in residential neighborhoods shall be a maximum of 400 meters from a neighborhood commercial node. If that's something that council wishes to soften, certainly you could look at adjusting the operative wording, so going from shall to should, if you so wished. So one other component of the discussion is a policy or a set of policies that recommended minimizing front driveways on major collectors and other roadways that provide high volume access for communities in the peak AM and peak PM periods of time during a day. So that's essentially between 7 and 9 AM and 3 and 6 PM, you see your highest levels of traffic. Sometimes traffic can get a little bit gummed up if there are too many front access driveways on main collector roads. And so one way of managing that is to minimize the number of driveways on main roads into and out of communities. We also recognize that driveways do have other impacts. So if we have a lot of driveways on main roads, we reduce the amount of on-street parking as a community benefit for folks who have visitors or other individuals coming to the community during the day or the evening. We increase impervious surface, which relates to stormwater. And we create potential points of conflict with vehicles and cyclists and walkers trying to use the sidewalk and having to navigate a high number of driveways can also be of concern sometimes. So again, it's important to recognize what the intent is and is not with policies such as this. The intent is not to have all streets and new neighborhoods not have driveways, but it is to have only main access roads with minimal numbers of driveways. So that's typically going to be 1 or 2 roads per new neighborhood, per quarter section of land for argument's sake. The benefits are that it prioritizes the function of the street during the peak AM and PM flows, and it also prioritizes active modes users, walkers and cyclists during those peak times when traffic is heaviest and there's the greatest potential for conflict between vehicles and active modes users. So again, we have the policies relating directly to that point highlighted on the screen. 7.8 indicates development of new front access drives shall be minimized. So it doesn't say completely eliminated, but it does indicate that they shall be minimized. So that would be something that would be discussed in consultation with the developer of a new neighborhood to figure out what exactly that means to them and what it means to the community and where that number can be negotiated in terms of the number of driveways that they may wish to have on a main road. I'll pass it back to Madeline for the last couple of slides, and then we'll wrap up the presentation for council.
So just to talk a little bit about how the MDP actually gets implemented and reviewed over time. So this is kind of the last section of the document talking about implementation. The lifetime of the town plan is 20 years. So obviously it's expected that circumstances and priorities may change over that time. So the implementation section of the town plan provides some direction for regularly reviewing and updating the MDP every 4 years in line with council terms. So of course that would follow the regular MGA processes and include consultation with stakeholders. So it's a bit of a living document. The planning and development process, one thing we just wanted to note from Appendix C, which outlines the different steps in the development process, is the difference between area structure plans and outline plans. So ASPs are statutory plans, and they typically apply to a larger area, such as a combination of neighborhoods, and you'll be seeing those come forward as the area that has been annexed into Coaldale gets developed. Outline plans are for smaller areas and more focused on servicing and design, and they are not a statutory plan, so we just wanted to highlight that there's those two different tools for developers, and that will hopefully simplify the process and make clear the expectations at different stages of development about what needs to be provided. With implementation and monitoring, that's Appendix D in the plan. It includes a list of policies and strategies from the town plan that are actionable and measurable. So this goes a bit further than a lot of MDPs. Not all of them have this kind of table in the back that gives some direct time frames and takes some of the actions that the town can move forward with and makes them a little more clear how that will be implemented. So this is to show that some follow through and also where possible things that can be tracked or measured, such as density targets and things like that. So this table will help guide the work of staff and council over the next decades and supports accountability in the planning process so that we can see that the MDP won't just be a plan on the shelf, but will actually be implemented and acted on. So of course this table can be updated and amended as needed, particularly when new councils look at their review of it and their priorities for that next term. So that really covers what we wanted to talk about related to the content of the town plan. So just before finishing off, just want to touch on the circulation comments to other agencies and then the next steps for tonight, I guess. So our agency and partner circulations in MDP has to be circulated to school boards and to the county or to surrounding municipalities. So while all comments should be considered, it's not necessary that you make all the changes or act on all of the comments. So Coaldale went beyond the basic requirements of those two agencies to circulate to and circulate to everyone in this list here, and you can see who's provided comments so far. I'll just touch on a few of those. So Alberta Health Services provided some background information on how to plan communities that promote health and safety, and they kind of let us know that the town plan includes many good examples of healthy community design principles, so that was good to hear. Alberta Transportation noted the need to circulate to them with future planning and development matters, which is kind of dealt with through our subdivision regulations and our regular processes. The Palliser and Holy Spirit school divisions were generally in support of the plan and had no additional comments. And then from CP Rail, they gave us kind of their standard comment about residential development adjacent to rail line operations and noted those guidelines that should be followed with any future proposed residential development. I just want to touch on Lethbridge County. They were happy with the plan, but they did request a few changes that we've outlined there in the form of increasing the minimum density, which I think Spencer's covered that pretty clearly, that we do have that minimum, but we also have that target. So I think that that's been covered. But then they just had a smaller change to wording around the watershed management policy. So moving that language to be a little stronger to say shall instead of may. And this is just because this is something that they obviously feel strongly about, and it's already work that we're already kind of doing anyway. So it makes sense that staff's in support of making that change if that's an amendment that we want to see tonight. So the next steps, tonight we're having the public hearing, and we have not heard any written comments or verbal comments or had any requests to speak tonight at the public hearing so far. The ad for it was advertised for 3 weeks in the Sunny South News, and it's been on the town's webpage and social media feed for a month. So we've given definitely fulfilled the requirements for advertising for the public hearing today. So the options before council then to move forward with this is, of course, you're free to discuss the town plan, ask questions, and then you can either complete second and third reading with or without amendments, or you can table the bylaw if you would need more information or more time to discuss. So those are the options today. And that's all. Thank you.
So I'll just wrap up with a few final comments before we draw the presentation to a conclusion. I just wanted to note, Madeline noted that we had circulated and notified in accordance with the MGA. I just wanted to note specifically that on the webpage and the town's social media feeds, we had those pieces up for about a week in as a following the 3 weeks of notification in the newspaper. I did want to take this time to recognize the staff that I've been able to work with and effectively develop this plan with based on the feedback and all of the processes that have led to this evening. So I'd like to recognize Melanie for sure and other staff that have been involved in the development of the plan. Certainly the planning advisors, Madeline and Ryan from the Planning Commission, have been integral to the process, as has the GIS department at the Regional Services Commission. And of course this wouldn't have been able to occur without the work of the Town Plan Working Group or all members of the community that have committed time and effort to providing feedback to the town plan as you see it this evening. And that draws our conclusion to the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Spencer, Madeline, and Melanie. Is there any questions of our administration by council? Councillor Lloyd?
Your worship. Cottonwood is one of our most beautiful developments. I think it's recognized all over the province as being a good development. So we've got 5.8 in Cottonwood. So if we had another developer come in that wanted to do some similar development in another part of Coaldale, and our goal is to do 8 units per acre, how would you handle that?
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Cottonwood is a net of 5.1 units per acre as it stands today. I should at this point recognize that all of our communities and neighborhoods in town, all of the neighborhoods, Cottonwood, Parkside, our older neighborhoods, Eastview and Garden Grove, and everything that makes up our community in terms of our specific neighborhoods are all fantastic places because they house our community, our members of the community that make up Coaldale. And that's certainly worth recognizing before getting into the nuts and bolts of what has to be considered when new development occurs in the newly annexed areas. Certainly, Cottonwood should be a goal to strive for. It's a beautiful community. One way of increasing density in a neighborhood such as that would be to introduce some form of multifamily development, whether it's condominiums or duplexes or triplexes or townhomes that would fit the architectural style and purchasing power of individuals in those types of neighborhoods. It's something that can be done, and there are many good examples of how to get there. I'm not sure that 8 units an acre is something that would necessarily need to be achieved with each new neighborhood. It's more so the idea that we're looking at ways of increasing density from our current average with each new neighborhood. So that might be a little less clear based on what we have in the plan, but we just recognize at this point in the policies, they indicate we should work towards the goal of 8 units per acre, but it's certainly not to say that every new neighborhood must be at that level yet. It could take some work over time to achieve those density targets that have been suggested in the document. Is there anything that you'd like to add to that, Madeline?
I guess just that it is on that's on a town-wide level, those density targets, and it's a slow process as development occurs. And also through infill development is another opportunity to increase density targets. So I think that would have to be a conversation with the developer at the time that they come in, but I think I've seen it very successful in other communities that if you're wanting to propose a larger lot, subdivision style, that doesn't mean that you can't incorporate more of a diversity of housing, and it can be in a certain area or maybe around the park or the school where you're giving a little more access there, and that has a lot of benefits just for a diversity of people as well that live in a community and providing those housing options. And we have a lot of people that come to work in Coaldale or that can't afford to live here or things like that, right? So or that come to Coaldale and work in Lethbridge, and just providing those options to lots of different people I think is the goal.
Yeah, thank you, Worship, and thank you so much for this great presentation. Thank you to all your staff for the many hours of work that have gone behind this project. I know it's going to be a new thing for Coaldale as a living document, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it anticipates growth, but also good growth. And just with that, I think that you made a really key point, Spencer, and I think the fact is that if we look at net density as the ultimate, so really when a developer comes to Coaldale or developer wants to develop a certain, has a plan, that it won't penalize that developer or those developers from contributing to our community with those standards of net density. So with that, I guess one of your other points that you make earlier about driveways and the new, I guess, the new thought process moving forward, that maybe developers should understand how you would like to interpret driveways and parking and that sort of a thing, so that we may be able to develop our neighborhoods accordingly. And you know, if you have to add alleys as part of the package, so that we understand everything, including, you know, the new thing about garbage or bin pickups. I think that that's a new reality. It's going to be a part of our future, and so I think you've addressed all those points in good order, Spencer, and I'll be supporting the readings moving forward. Thank you, Worship.
The chair recognizes Councillor Simpson, and I believe Councillor Holm is on deck. Did you want another kick it? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I really like how you worded it, density as a choice, because I know in the recent few months I've talked to a few people that are looking to downsize even to like a condo size, and there's nothing really available in Coaldale, and there's not much available in that. So I really like how we're seeing that. And I also agree with that, with the main roads, to have no driveway in the front, and then they would have access to a back garage through the alley. So I quite like the plan. Way to go.
Or home.
I'm just going to follow up on a couple of things just to make sure I got it in my own mind. So there is no legislative requirements for a density in the SSRP, is that correct?
The suggested 8. But no, it's not a must. It's not
Okay.
an MG. It's something in the MGA or something that
Okay.
says you must. But there's a directive of 8
Yeah.
per acre.
Use the land as best you can, but there is no actual number. Okay. The second one, I was wondering, when we went through our annexation, did we have a density factor that we used for deciding how much land we were going to require during our annexation process?
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Holm, that's an excellent question. Thank you for that. With the annexation, what we did was we explicitly recognized to the MGB and through all of our calculations and discussions with the county that we were basing our ask in terms of the amount of land required on what we know today. So we know that we have 5.1 units an acre as an average today. And then in the same breath, we recognize that in accordance to the SSRP, there is guidance indicating increased density should be sought after into the future. So we did recognize to the MGB and the county and through those processes that an increase in density is also something that should be looked at as a way of extending the timeline that annexed land will serve.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think that covers most of mine. Thank you.
Just to be clear, that density number would be, could we put it that it is more aspirational than mandatory?
My understanding is the 8 units an acre is in the SSRP, but as I can't recall the exact wording. I believe it's as something that should be considered as a goal for municipalities. And that certainly can be made to be aspirational. I would suggest if we look back at sorry, it's difficult to drive the mouse on an angle here, so just bear with me. Lana, could you go back to the specific slide that shows the actual policies for the density component? getting close. One more, I think. Okay. One more head, please. Okay. So what we have here is a wording that says work towards an average density, and that it shall be measured at the scale of the whole town. So that's something that doesn't include a operative wording forcing a particular goal other than to say it shall be measured at the scale of the whole town. But work towards is, from my perspective, looking at it as a policy, less committal than to say we must get to that point. Instead, we're working towards that goal. So as long as we show some increase to density averages over time, to me that would fulfill that goal.
And based on what you were saying, the areas of change, they could also facilitate that increase in our average density quite easily as well, right? Because we are noting that we're anticipating that some areas in Coaldale will morph into different densities or different uses over time, and over time, due to infills or legal suites, etc., that could help with the overall density of the town. And, you know, for example, even Cottonwood at a low density, by adding even just secondary suites, could significantly boost that number without really changing the aesthetics of the neighborhood. So I think it's not as draconian or maybe as unsightly or ugly as some people might picture in their mind when you look at a holistic point of view. Because I remember sitting with our partners, Lethbridge County, and you know their mandate is to preserve agricultural land, and I think, you know, as in good faith, trying to show that we were trying to change the way municipalities grow and not necessarily encourage a lot of sprawl all the time. That I think that was sort of part of our understanding is we're not necessarily going to just run back and ask for more land every 20 years because we have poor planning policy and don't encourage a little bit more efficient use of our own footprint.
And if I may, Mayor, just to wrap up the discussion, it is worth noting that with the implementation section of the plan, there's certainly recognition that this is a plan that we intend to be reviewed thoroughly over time and not meant to be a static document that we look at again in 10 or 20 years. So this is something, density is something that's of particular interest to not only Coaldale, but many communities similar to Coaldale. And so it's something that we'll pay particular attention to and make sure that we have good discussions with council and the community on as time goes on to make sure that we're meeting the goals that are reflective of the values that council and the community holds.
Just near the end of the slide deck, there was a change, like to highlight it from shall or whatnot. Are those already embedded in the document, or if we were going to include those two changes, would they have to be, yeah?
Right, so that would be an
the way
amendment.
it is now?
No, it's the way it is now is with the operative wording being may. And if council wishes to accept the suggested changes from Lethbridge County, those would be changed to should and shall as a brief amendment to the plan or the bylaw before it's passed for second and third reading.
And what would your advice be on whether we should entertain or not entertain those two little changes?
So as Madeline had already mentioned, it's something that our understanding is the county recognizes we're already practicing these types of processes with the county, recognizing water is a critical resource that needs to be managed effectively. So changing these operative words to should and shall would not have a negative material impact on the plan.
I'm just wondering, because we still have a couple of, believe key agencies have not responded yet, as in Alberta Environment and Parks is still pending, and our good neighbor SMRAD, who is going to be very much involved, I'm sure, in any stormwater, etc. still pending, waiting for their comments. I'm wondering if we should not table this until the next meeting for second and third reading, and it may actually, I guess, allow our citizens another 2 weeks of being able to have input now that they've seen it on live streaming, because I'm sure there's a number that are watching it. It gives another 2 weeks of, I guess, community involvement if needed, but at least then hopefully we will have those final two, because I think they're both key. And I'd hate to approve this and then have something come out of the woodwork from one of those two agencies.
Spencer?
If I may, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Councillor Holm, excellent suggestions. I think one thing to make note of is that the agencies, as Madeline had indicated, that are required to be circulated have been. So just to ensure that we know that SMRD and Alberta Environment and Parks, certainly their feedback is valuable. It's not necessary as per the MGA, but it would be a show of collaboration if council wished to delay the approval of second and third reading. And on that note, if there is a desire to reopen the public hearing, I might suggest that there are two ways to go about that. That either the hearing would be recessed and then advertising would take place to let the community know that it's still open and that commentary can be received by council if that were to be the wish of council at a subsequent hearing, or a continuation of a hearing at a subsequent meeting, or the public hearing for this evening could be closed, and then advertising could be prepared indicating that the hearing would be reopened at a future date for further feedback from the community if anybody so wished.
So I guess I wouldn't want to necessarily delay it because neither of those agencies are required to respond. We already circulated to them. So I guess if we were gonna extend to the next meeting or whatever suitable time forward in the future, I guess we would maybe also write Alberta Environment and SMRD and say that we have circulated to you and we will be, dealing with this matter on such and such a date. So if you want to reply, please feel free or something like that.
Certainly, yes. If we've already been in contact with both agencies multiple times, within the first 28 days of circulation, they didn't find the time to provide comment, which is perfectly fine. We're all very busy, so if that's something that staff needs to follow up on, we can certainly do that. I might make one final suggestion that if we are going to either close this hearing and then reopen it in the future or recess and reopen, that we allow time for 2 more weeks of notification in the newspaper to ensure we continue to meet those timelines as per the MGA. So that may put us, I don't have my calendar in front of me, but that may put us to the last meeting in November. If you don't mind, Mr. Chair, I can quickly check and confirm that.
Okay. So let's just do a kind of a straw poll because we are in open public meeting. So is there any wish to delay then? Is by show of hands to wait for that additional? Anybody else? Butch? I can't hear, your mic isn't on. So. All right, so. Okay, is there any other comments or questions? Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify, you said those organizations have already had it for 28 days, correct?
Correct. It's not to say that their feedback isn't valuable. We just have to meet certain deadlines to be able to keep processes moving forward.
Councillor Chapman.
I just neglected to thank Holmland Regional Services Commission for their part in this as well. So you can just let Madeline know afterwards if you don't mind.
Mr. Chair, if I might just highlight, I had a chance to consult my calendar, and November 9th would be the next opportunity for a reopened hearing or a hearing coming out of recess.
Well, what I'll do now is, I think we still have options, so I will, barring any more input into the public hearing process, I'll ask one more last time if there's any more input to the public hearing. Okay, so then I will use my discretion and close the public hearing then tonight, and then we can discuss further in the agenda and entertain what we will do there. Okay, so the public hearing is now closed on the town plan, and we will continue on with tonight's agenda. We have item 3.1, which is the regular council meeting minutes of September 28th, 2020. Are there errors or omissions, additions, comments on the minutes? I would entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as circulated. Councillor Avery makes that motion. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Okay, that's carried, thank you. And then we have item 4.1, property tax and utilities collection update. And will Kyle be joining us? Okay, Kyle will join us. Maybe. Oh, there he is. Okay, welcome Kyle to tonight's meeting, and you have item 4.1, the property tax and utilities collection update.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. This report is to provide council with an update regarding the collection for the property tax and utility deferral program. At the March 30th, 2020 special council meeting, council approved the tax and utility payment and relief measures for residents and businesses of Coaldale. In light of COVID-19, the previous cost estimate for these programs was between $80,000 and $120,000 for the town. On the report here is just analysis of the collection of property taxes month by month from June to September for 2019 compared to 2020. I'll just pause for a moment here. Okay, so you can see from June to September of 2019, the balance left outstanding was between 7 and 5%. Compare this to 2020, we started off at 46% outstanding in June and ended off in 4% in September once the deadline had passed. As we proceed with the utility deferral, you can see there is an uptake in the balance outstanding each month. So this does proposed that the program was being used by residents. However, when comparing it to the property tax, you can see the scope of the utility deferral was far less than the property tax deferral. With the property tax deadline September 30th and the utility deferral program going to the end of September, these programs are now both closed. The operating financial impact, both these programs combined, is estimated at $60,000 a year for the year, which is less than the expected amount of $80,000 to $120,000 for the year. This reduction isn't anything due to changes in the program, but rather just a decrease in interest rates and changes in estimates, as the town's interest rate was previously at 2.45 and now is at 0.95 with COVID-19. That being said, this concludes the report, and I'll turn it back to council for any questions they may have.
Kyle, for that, I'll open it to council with any questions. Councilor Chapman?
Comment here, Your Worship, and thank you, Kyle, for this report. In your assessment, overall, this was a successful exercise for our community to embrace?
I believe it did have a lot of positive benefits for the community. It's kind of consistent with many other deferral programs that we have seen from banks and mortgages and whatnot. Kind of highlighted that in regards to mortgage deferrals and whatnot. It was released out of Alberta, did have the highest in the country. So you can see that there was a need for, this is speaking on the grander scope of the province as a whole. But with what Coaldale did, I believe it did have quite a big benefit just from the large use of the property tax deferral alone.
Other questions? So with our program right now, it's just, how are we phasing in the penalty?
Correct. So we'll start with the property tax deferral program. So anyone who had a current balance owing as of October 1st, there was a 4.5% penalty applied to that account. That is down from the normal 9% as part of the relief measures. Every subsequent month after that, that balance will incur a 1% penalty. In regards to the utilities, since the program ended September 30th, residents have generally 30 days for their utility bill to pay that before it's subject to late penalties. So from October 1st to October 30th, that's kind of the 30-day waiting period after the program is ended. So November 1st, they'll see penalties charged again for unpaid balances as they normally would have.
So that's being well communicated through our, okay, thank you.
Correct. As part of the utility notices that went out, I believe there was a note on the utility bills alerting residents that the program was coming to an end September 30th. On the property tax notice, there is also clear indication of dates and penalties that will be charged on specific dates with non-payment.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay. So unless there's any further questions, I'll then entertain a motion to receive this report for information. Councillor Simpson makes that motion. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And then we have item 4.2, request for municipal inspection, and I'll turn the floor over to CAO Hastings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As part of this agenda item, you'll see that we received, as of the publication of the agenda package, 352 letters of support from citizens that entered their letters through the Citizens for a Better Coaldale webpage. Given the size of these documents, they were photocopied and then the PDFs were compressed and then placed on the website as opposed to this particular agenda software, just given the size. They were posted at the same time as this agenda package. For letters that were sent separately from the form letter, we've got correspondence from Mr. Jack Van Ryan, from the Alberta Birds of Prey Centre, and Mr. Chris Mikado. So the purpose of this report is to briefly summarize the municipal inspection process and provide supplementary information to Council in response to some of the material provided by residents. This matter first appeared before Council at the regular Council meeting of September 8, 2020, where it was resolved that Council table further discussion on the request for a municipal inspection until the October 13th, 2020 regular Council meeting, and request that Mr. Van Ryan provide a copy of his discussion that was presented, that was since distributed to Town Council. I'll provide a brief refresher on some of the procedural elements. Part 1 of the Municipal Government Act deals with the purposes, powers, and capacity of municipalities. In particular, Section 3 states that the purposes of a municipality are to provide good government, foster the well-being of the environment, provide services, facilities, or other things that, in the opinion of Council, are necessary or desirable for all or part of the municipality, develop and maintain safe and viable communities, and work collaboratively with neighboring municipalities to plan, deliver, and fund intermunicipal services. The MGA also gives broad bylaw passing authority to councils to govern municipalities in whatever way the councils consider appropriate within the jurisdiction given to them. In discharging these powers, council need to make tough choices about which initiatives to advance, at what pace, and in what manner. The purpose of an inspection is not to second-guess the valid exercise of these powers by a duly elected council. The inspection process is authorized under Section 571 of the MGA, where the minister may, in their discretion, upon review of the applicable materials, require any matter connected with the management, administration, or operation of any municipality or any assessment prepared under Part 9 to be inspected. Section 571(1) of the Municipal Government Act enumerates 3 scenarios to initiate a municipal inspection. On the minister's initiative, by a request of council, or by petition from electors of the municipality constituting at least 20% of the population. The parameters as established by the MGA are quite broad, but they are also indicative of the matters to be considered. The words management, administration, or operation clearly indicate the day-to-day activities of a municipality's governing bodies and management. The core purpose of an inspection is to determine whether a municipality is being managed in an irregular, improper, or improvident manner. It is not a performance measurement tool, nor a conscience-clearing vehicle for dispelling rumors. It is a serious process reserved for serious matters that cannot be resolved through other, more appropriate means. Definitionally speaking, irregular can be defined as, quote, not according to established principles, procedures, or law, not normal, not following the usual rules about what should be done. Improper can be defined as deviating from fact, truth, or established usage, unsuitable, not appropriate, not conforming to accepted standards of conduct. Improvident can be defined as lacking foresight, taking no thought of future needs, spendthrift, not providing for or saving for the future, not wise or sensible regarding money. Examples of issues leading to a municipal inspection include fiscal improprieties, a dysfunctional council or administration that is unable to make decisions, improperly awarded municipal contracts, corruption, non-compliance with legislation, toxic workplace cultures, and the like. A consideration on whether a municipal inspection process is granted is, has a matter or problem previously been brought to the attention of a council or the appropriate authority and then subsequently ignored by said council or authority? Have other forms of recourse been attempted or exhausted? Secondary to the determination of the presence of any irregularities, improprieties, or improvidence, municipal inspectors have historically also identified areas for improvement in their report, but this is not the primary point or function of the municipal inspection process. While self-improvement is an outcome, it is not why the inspection tool exists. In viewing the content provided in the municipal inspection reports of other municipalities, it is clear that municipal inspections do not exist to second-guess a council's strategic or capital plans, nor its vision or mandate for a community. An inspection does not cause council-approved projects, does not pause council-approved projects, nor freeze a municipality's assets until such time that the inspection process is complete. Barring the discovery of criminal activity or corruption, municipal councils are free to govern as they see fit during an inspection, provided, however, they have adequate resources to do so. The timeline for a municipal review process to be completed is generally a year or more, depending on scope and the time required by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs to assess the merits of the material provided to them by those seeking the inspection. Inspections are not automatically granted just because they are asked for, nor are they automatically granted just because Municipal Affairs is in receipt of a petition asking them to do one. Also, it would be unusual from an administrative fairness perspective to have the results of any major external inspection released leading up to an election. The reason for such embargoes is to protect the integrity of such processes from being politicized. In summary, should an inspection be granted by the Minister of Municipal Affairs, be that at Council's request or by way of a petition, the results of the exercise would almost surely be published next Council term. The following are the main stages of the inspection process, starting with the application request. Unless requested by Town Council directly, the request would need to obtain the support of 20% of the population. Notification to the Minister of Municipal Affairs of this request is then made, and the sufficiency of the petition is reviewed by an official appointed by the province. Determination of whether to conduct an inspection is the next step. If the petition is sufficient, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs will then assess the merits of the request, and to this end will do a preliminary interview with the citizens requesting the inspection, the council and members of the administration, and they will determine if or to what extent an inspection is warranted or whether a different recourse tool is more appropriate. Following these interviews, department staff from the Department of Municipal Affairs will then either recommend or not recommend to the minister that an inspection takes place. If an inspection is granted, an RFP will go out to obtain the consultants to undertake the review. Once the inspector is appointed, it will then take several months for them to gather data, interview key individuals in the town and community to understand the processes and systems in place, and to submit a final report to the minister. Once the minister has a final report, it'll then be reviewed, and the minister may then issue directives to the municipality if concerns are raised. Typically, municipalities have an opportunity to respond to the report and directives. The final report is presented to council at a public meeting and posted on the Municipal Affairs website for anyone to view. In terms of financial impact, the cost of the inspection is generally borne by the municipality, subject to the municipality's ability to finance the expense. These costs vary depending on the scope of the improved inspection. In discussions administration has had with Municipal Affairs, the cost of municipal inspections average between $50,000 and $70,000, but can exceed $100,000 to $150,000 depending on the scope of review that's required. However, this is purely looking at the cost from the perspective of a single transaction. The full cost of such an exercise, once all variables are considered, could in actual fact be significantly more. It is recommended that council give consideration to these additional factors prior to proceeding. It should be noted that a municipal inspection will take significant amounts of staff time. Should an inspection take place, consideration should be given to hiring additional contract staff to assist with the increased workload that would be brought on by the inspection process. Indeed, if council wishes to maintain its current capital plan and strategic mandate during the process of an inspection, an estimated 20 to 30 hour a week contract positions for a period of 12 to 18 months would be needed to assist with various organizational functions. This would come at an estimated additional cost of $250,000. Should council move to request an inspection, or if one should go through by way of a petition, it is recommended that council flag this as a topic of discussion during budget deliberations. Costs should also be viewed in the context of potential lost investment. For example, it was noted by Mr. Van Ryan during his delegation at the regular council meeting of September 28, 2020, that he was told by the Department of Municipal Affairs in his discussions with them that, quote, whatever is happening with the school and where it is in the budget cycle, a municipal inspection might hit the pause button on that until they find out what's going on when they go back layer by layer, quote. The estimated value of a new high school is $39 million. And it's not just a new high school, it's also a full grade reconfiguration package as well. Although Mr. Van Ryan mentioned that he had multiple, in fact, weekly conversations with Municipal Affairs about this matter, Council may wish to speak to the Minister of Municipal Affairs directly about whether the inspection process would have any barring on school funding. This may be an important fact to verify because we are currently sitting on the stimulus spend side of a government spending cycle. Periods of stimulus spending are historically followed by periods of greater fiscal restraint. While every level of government has the freedom to manage the pace and distribution of spending as they see fit, the worst time to pause a shovel-ready project that relies on provincial funding to move forward is when they are in the stimulus spending cycle. In addition to reaching out to the Minister of Municipal Affairs, a meeting with Palliser School Division is recommended to see if they could still retain Coaldale as their #1 capital project priority if the prospect of funding for the new high school got delayed as a result of a municipal inspection. Now that I have provided an overview of the municipal inspection process, I will provide some supplementary information in response to some of the materials submitted as part of this council agenda item. Although I won't get into the specifics of any employment matter in the public portion of a council meeting, I can offer the following. I can confirm that the town has systems in place that meet and exceed all statutory requirements to promote a healthy and safe work environment. If there are any instances of harassment, bullying, and/or discrimination in the workplace, an employee has a number of options for recourse available to them, both internally and externally. Employees can, by way of example, file a grievance with their union. In Coaldale's case, that would be AUPE. They can file an incident report with the town safety officer, who will then investigate and provide the findings of the investigation to the Interdepartmental Joint Health and Safety Committee. An employee can file a complaint with OH&S. An employee can file a complaint with their supervisor or their supervisor's supervisor following the chain of command. An employee can also file a complaint with the Alberta Human Rights Commission. Indeed, there are several channels available to both union and non-unionized employees. In respect to how these channels relate to the workforce of the town of Coaldale, I can also confirm that as long as I've been town CAO, dating back to January 2015, no employee has filed a grievance related to a toxic, discriminatory, or harassing work environment. The town of Coaldale has not been involved with any legal, arbitration, or tribunal hearings of any kind that have been held in response to allegations about a toxic, discriminatory, or harassing work environment. I received confirmation from the town safety advisor that there have been no incident reports filed to him in response to alleged bullying, harassment, or discriminatory behavior in the workplace by town staff. Although a few incidents have been filed in response to the actions of a few residents who behaved disrespectfully toward town staff, all of which were dealt with, no incidents related to the internal conduct of town employees have been filed. We recently had an external safety audit performed by an independent third-party consultant that was selected from the roster of auditors recommended and approved by the Alberta Municipal Health and Safety Association, AMSA. There were no instances of discrimination or harassment reported at the conclusion of this independent process. There have been no lawsuits pertaining to matters of discrimination and harassment. There have been no OH&S investigations regarding matters of or violence in the workplace. There have been no complaints made to the Alberta Human Rights Commission as relates to matters, concerns, or allegations about bullying, harassment, and/or discrimination in the workplace. It is frankly perplexing why we are hearing about such serious things from a former employee 7 months after his departure, given all of the independent recourse tools that are at his and any other employee's disposal. In Mr. Macado's case, I can confirm that he was represented by AUPE, the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees, throughout all aspects of his employment as well as his departure. He had full and complete representation pursuant to the collective agreement and applicable statutes and received, in all the circumstances, a very fair treatment. It is mysterious, with the number of independent external agencies that are available, that none of the 23 employees generally mentioned in the materials provided felt comfortable enough, nor the need to, pursue any of the recourse tools available to them. Having worked with AUPE for the past 6 years, I can say that they have never been shy to advocate for their members. I'm confident that if anyone complained to them about being belittled, harassed, bullied, or discriminated against in the workforce, they'd waste no time pursuing it. For non-unionized staff, they have the ability to file a complaint with OH&S and/or the Human Rights Commission. Mysteriously, no such complaints to any of these independent bodies has been made. Yet, years later, we are now told that these same employees have allegedly found a trusted confidant in a member of the public who appears to have self-appointed himself as the ultimate pursuer of labor and employment justice, above all legal remedies that are available but have not been utilized. It is perplexing that Mr. Mikado, if he was truly discriminated against, harassed, and/or bullied, as he claims in his public letter to council, that he did not bother to file a grievance with the union about such things during his appointment or upon his exit from the organization. I recommend that council ask the town solicitors for any other specifics during the closed session portion of this meeting that may not have been included in Mr. Mikado's letter. We have worked hard to ensure we have put robust systems in place to ensure a respectful workplace environment free from things like bullying, discrimination, and harassment. The Alberta government has also created robust labor and employment laws, as well as protocols, tribunals, and standards that provide independent protection to and outlets for employees who are on the receiving end of mistreatment to pursue. None of these systems were utilized by Mr. Mikado or any of the other employees that were alluded to in the public letters submitted to council. To rely on their letters as evidence, in quotes, to justify the use of another system, a municipal inspection, to provide an independent external examination of their complaints when they haven't utilized any of the independent tools which are already in existence is perplexing. Municipal inspections are a last resort. They aren't a substitute for independent recourse methods already established by the province that former staff didn't bother to utilize. That being said, I would welcome the opportunity to bring in an independent external HR consultant to see if there are any barriers that may be in place for employees wishing to access the significant processes that are already in place to ensure a respectful workplace environment. In addition, given that council is now in receipt of a written complaint by a former employee, I recommend that council, in fulfillment of its statutory obligations, retain an independent third-party consultant to conduct an incident investigation into the accusations contained in Mr. Mikado's public letter, as well as to perform an examination and audit of our workplace environment. There are a few reasons for this recommendation. First, the truth is its own defense. There is nothing to hide. I have no concerns with getting everything on the table so we can move forward as a community and organization in the absence of ongoing rumors. If there are issues of concern, it is in everyone's best interest to get to the bottom of them as soon as possible, not a year plus from now. Under OH&S legislation, employers have a duty to respond to complaints such as this in as timely a manner as possible. A municipal inspection is too bulky an instrument for the time-sensitive and precise requirements of this task. Having an independent investigation conducted by a trained investigator/HR specialist will be important for preserving organizational integrity. Having an independent investigation conducted by a trained investigator will also vet the credibility of the claims provided by Chris Mikado, who has relied on assistance from his brother-in-law and a former councillor and unsuccessful mayoral candidate to get his message out. All three individuals are part of the same group that refers to themselves as Citizens for a Better Coaldale. Given the curious connections, indeed the close nexus, between the parties that are advancing this employee complaint letter, an external review by an independent HR investigator will be important for ruling out the possibility of, or at the very least the optical perception of, political intent and collusion. As CAO, I have made very tough personnel decisions for the best interests of the organization that have no doubt had impacts on past employees. These are not decisions I enjoy making, nor are they ones I take lightly. They are extremely difficult, by far the hardest part of my job, but it is my job to make them, and I accept that anger is a natural response to losing a job in an organization that's great to work for. As a result of these difficult decisions, the town has saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, even after the cost of severance has been accounted for. It is true that we have done some significant reorganization over the years to improve efficiency and effectiveness while saving taxpayers money. It is also true that we have a very talented and capable workforce that is doing an outstanding job executing their core responsibilities. I have worked for the town of Coaldale for 10 years now. I have never seen more talent and stability across all levels of the organization than I do right now in October 2020. With those comments, I will now provide a few options for council to consider on how to move forward. Option 1 is that council defer any formal decision with respect to this matter until after speaking with the town's solicitors during the closed session portion of this council meeting. Option 2, that council table this item and request that additional information be brought back to council at a future council meeting prior to making a final decision on whether to request a municipal inspection. And then option 3 is that council move forward with the municipal inspection as requested. My professional recommendation is option 1, that council defer making a formal decision with respect to this matter until after speaking with the town's solicitors during the closed session portion of this council meeting. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Hastings. I was just gonna take the liberty to provide my own observations and opinions, and I apologize for any duplication because I might duplicate some of the thoughts that Kalen put forward. And I just want to preface this as I'm trying to be respectful and to all parties involved. There's no intent to be offensive or lacking respect to the citizens group or any members therein, but I just want to express my opinion on these matters. So I'm a big supporter of self-improvement. You are not going to hear me say this council has done everything perfectly, but I am very proud of what we as a council have accomplished so far. I recognize there are areas that we could improve on, our communication abilities as a council being one of them. I went through the package of materials provided with great detail, including the information provided to us by external legal counsel. With respect to the information provided, continues to lack the specifics required for us to ask for an inspection, a process that has the potential to cost us significantly more than what the proponents of the review estimate, perhaps upwards of $200,000. When many other factors are considered, it is highly unlikely that a report will be complete and published this council term. To me, that's an imprudent use of tax dollars and lazy governance. We are the council that was elected by the community, and there's basically a year left in this council term. If there are issues that need to be dealt with, we can do that now, starting tomorrow, using the right tools and resources. A municipal inspection is not going to provide this falsely advertised catch-all cure for community concerns. For the reasons that follow, I remain of the mind that we can deal with the core areas of the concern that have been identified in the matter of months for a fraction of the cost without jeopardizing significant funding opportunities like a new high school. I'll go through each of the main themes of concern that have been brought forward. So for capital projects, the first area of concern that has been highlighted has to do with our capital projects and the perceived lack of diligence and transparency behind them. Two projects in particular have been brought up: Civic Square and the joint high school/rec center. Civic Square. I have acknowledged in previous media reports that we could improve our communication about the precise details of our Civic Square project. Unlike other projects, such as Main Street and our new fire hall, there are reasons why certain project details have been slow to roll out. Number one, we are in negotiations with third-party developers to complete the project on the town's behalf. We acquired town so we could amalgamate the parcels and sell it back to them. Legitimate confidentiality and legal requirements mean you need to be careful not to prematurely say too much in public about multiple concurrent land sales and third-party business interests when the details aren't finalized. Due to COVID, negotiations came to a standstill and anticipated announcements were delayed. The town is temporarily holding the cost of the certain land parcels until such time that they can be resold to the development group that is selected to undertake the project. In hindsight, one thing I wish we had done differently was to have our administration present the request for expression of interest document to council in public session after it was vetted by legal counsel and posted on the Alberta Purchasing Connection. This would have been a good opportunity for us to toot our own horns about the great economic development potential that such a project carries. While renderings of the conceptual drawing did end up on social media after being downloaded from the Alberta Purchasing Connection, we should have also added this information package to our own website. In summary, I can acknowledge that we do have room to improve here. As mayor, I am committed to doing better in this area. However, I do not see how an expensive multi-year inspection process is the appropriate remedy when I am acknowledging that we're open as a council to making some adjustments. I don't follow why the big fanfare and expensive inspection is needed when all we have to do as a council is hire, for example, a communications and public engagement consultant to help us make changes right now. I think of the municipal review process as a person going to a general practitioner when what they really need to do is engage a specialist. With regards to the Joint High School Rec Center, I haven't encountered a municipal project that has had as much collaboration and exercises of due diligence as this one. The site chosen for the high school has undergone extensive analysis by the town engineering and accounting and planning consultants, the provincial government and Palliser Regional School Division. Alberta Education and Alberta Infrastructure have endorsed this site and praised us for the impressive body of work that's been done to date, both in terms of the collaborative and innovative partnership with Palliser School Division, as well as our site readiness and due diligence measures. In addition, the Joint High School Rec Center project was vetted by an external project management firm retained by the province of Alberta during a 2-day value scoping exercise in October 2018. They too were satisfied that our project proposal met all the extensive requirements. For these reasons, why would we as a council voluntarily agree to hit the taxpayer with a costly and time-consuming provincial inspection process in order to bring external validation to a project site that has already been externally validated by different municipal departments? Further, concerns regarding the location of the high school were taken to the Alberta Ombudsman's office. After reviewing the relevant materials, the Ombudsman's office did not pursue an investigation because it too was satisfied with the appropriateness of the town's handling of the issue and the level of research and feasibility that went into the location that was selected for the Joint High School Rec Center. Our very own local MLA also spoke publicly in favor of our project at a Chamber of Commerce luncheon not too long ago. I believe his words when speaking about the site selected were, and I quote, "That train has left the station," end quote. The school site has been chosen We have exceeded our due diligence requirements. The province vetted and endorsed the site that was chosen. The perceived validation that a municipal inspection will bring to an already vetted project is redundant and unnecessary. It's time to move on. We have a public letter written to us by a former employee who gave us permission in writing to include it in the public portion of today's meeting agenda. It contains serious accusations about bullying, harassment, and discrimination. This is the first letter that we have received as a council of this nature. Under OH&S guidelines, we have an obligation to take complaints like this seriously and without delay. It is unclear why Mr. Mercado waited 7 months from the date of his departure to say anything. It is also unclear why he chose not to file a formal complaint with the union, the Alberta Human Rights Commission, or OH&S about being bullied or harassed or discriminated against while he was an employee of the town. The town has only become aware of Mr. Mercado's concerns as a result of his recent public letter, since no formal complaint through any of the procedures available to employees like him was filed. And as employment issues are a confidential private matter, we are not able to address the precise elements of his concerns in public. Nevertheless, now that we have heard from him, we are positioned to respond. In consulting with legal counsel, when it comes to workplace safety matters and promoting a respectful workplace environment, the tools you use to get to the bottom of something is important. If knowledge of an incident arises, you deal with it right away. You don't deal with it in an incident that comes up through a multi-year inspection process that will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is the wrong tool for the job. While the writer is correct in saying council cannot evaluate these concerns itself, he is incorrect when he says that a municipal inspection is the best and only solution for resolution. A municipal inspection is actually an inadequate choice and method to deal with the allegations brought forward because it lacks timely responsiveness. I, for one, am not interested in waiting a year or more to receive a report by an inspector hired by the province to learn about what our workplace culture is like. Nor am I interested in waiting a year or more to have allegations of harassment and discrimination verified. I am, however, in full support of council exercising its due diligence and hiring an independent external investigator, also known as a specialist, to look into the matters that have been brought forward. This is something we can do right away with a fraction of the time and cost. I won't get into any further details in public about this particular aspect of the agenda package as it involves personnel. I will reserve them for the town's legal counsel, who will be appearing before us during the closed session portion of this meeting. In summary, I will conclude my thoughts by responding to the comment, people feel that Coaldale Town Council has nothing to hide. Why is it not approving a municipal inspection? The answer to me is quite simple. We don't just commit to spending hundreds of thousands of tax dollars without good reason, and what better methods or courses of action exist for the particular matters brought forward. The municipal inspection isn't a tool you resort to because you are curious about your performance, nor a tool you resort to in order to pacify or prove the detractors wrong. Annually, the Department of Municipal Affairs generates a standardized report that evaluates municipalities based on 13 defined indications in the areas of governance, finance, and community in order to assess municipal viability and risk. Each indicator has a defined benchmark, and a municipality is deemed to be not at risk as long as it does not trigger a defined number of indications. To this effect, we received a letter from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs on September 20th, 2019 that states, the ministry has compiled and verified the data collected from Alberta's municipalities for the 2018 fiscal year and is pleased to inform you that the town of Coaldale did not trigger any of the 13 indicators. We have reached out to municipal affairs and have been given to understand that we will be receiving a similar letter in a few weeks for 2019. If the group that calls themselves Citizens for a Better Coaldale wants to spearhead a drive to obtain the requisite number of signatures for the chance of convincing the municipal affairs minister to grant an inspection at the risk of pausing funding for our new high school, that will be on their hands and their conscience, not mine. And that ends my comments. I'll open the floor to any member of council. Councilor Avery.
Your worship. So I'm speaking right now in favor of option 1. I'm deferring this until after we get some legal counsel. We hear Mr. Jack Van Ryan. But I would like to comment in the public section that I myself and the rest of council do take the allegations of bullying and discrimination very seriously. And I agree with your statement that we need to look at it quickly and not wait for a year, 18 months. It's got to be looked after now. And if that's the route that we choose, that council chooses the consultant, not our administration. So we're guiding this through and not administration. So council is the ones getting the result, as that's who the complaints came to.
Chapman.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to make my own comments with regards to the conduct and how we conduct business in our town. And I might just say that over the years, many years, being on council, we've held strategic planning sessions, and those strategic planning sessions are, almost all of them are held by an external facilitator, which helps us, give us the steering wheel to move the town forward. So I guess my own observation is that really from some of these strategic planning sessions, we've learned to become a gold standard in our community, to be the employer of choice. And that really sets the bar. The fact that even prospective employees are attracted to Coaldale to live, work, and play. And they've done their homework, they've done their research, and they find really the opposite of a toxic environment. Because in those kinds of environments, the word does get around. So they do their research, and they find that the rumors are true, that this is really a great place to work and play and live, and that it is a preferred employer of choice. All our volunteers that are in our community certainly believe in our town, and of course we can speak to all our volunteers on the library board, the fire department, the museum, our sports groups, and of course some of our committees and working groups have all found satisfaction from working from this community.
Any further, Councilor Lloyd, you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And speaking with several of the people that did sign this letter, the topic came up quite often, or all the time, about the good staff that we have. The administration staff are doing an excellent job, and this was totally agreed with by everybody. And in 2018, we received a Provincial Minister's Award for Municipal Excellence, so that's a real feather in our cap. This past year, we received an award for excellence in financial reporting. This was established in 1986 to encourage and assist Canadian local governments to go beyond the minimum requirements of generally accepted accounting principles, as set by the Public Sector Accounting Board for the Canadian Institute of Chartered Accountants, to prepare comprehensive annual financial reports that evidence the spirit of transparency and full disclosure, and then to recognize individual governments that succeed in achieving that goal. So we were really proud to be able to receive that award. So that was for transparency as well. So I think we have a lot to be thankful for, and we have an excellent administration staff.
So when Citizens for a Better Coaldale, with their delegation with Jack Van Ryan, when they gave it, the biggest thing that stood out for me is, Kaylin has already said the comment about the school. My kids have been raised in school in Palliser, in Coaldale, since preschool. When they were in preschool, Jenny Emery needed to expand. Jenny Emery has brought in portables. They cut down part of their library for a classroom, sorry. I would go into the atrium, walk right through the front door, and have to walk through a classroom. Now, when we talk about this school, it's not just for the high school age kids, it's from the kids from preschool to grade 12. So to put a pause button on that school, when my kids needed it many years ago, it cannot be paused any longer. I am sorry, I'm just appalled with that comment that could happen, and for my kids and for the kids of this community, and especially that more families are moving into this community, it just takes me back and it bothers me. So with the likelihood of the school being paused, I do have a question. What does that mean for all our other grants we've applied for the millions of dollars we've asked for? Do you know what, would that be paused too, Kaylin?
Sure, to Councillor Simpson. This is something that we would have to check on. We haven't reached out to the minister's office to ask these types of questions. The recommendation in the report is given that this was information presented to us by the delegation last week. It's recommended that council reach out to the minister's office to verify the risk that it might have, not just for the school, but other potential funding opportunities. Just by way of information, we have been notified of a couple of grants that we've received funding for. We're just waiting for the official letter from the Minister of Infrastructure before we can go public with it. So that's something we'd have to check on, just like verifying the school funding comment from the last delegation.
So with that, I know it was quoted in their presentation that it would cost each resident about $12.50, which for an average family of 4 is $50. But if we lose millions of dollars in grant, plus we lose the economic value that the school adds, those residents are paying a lot more than $12.50 each, and that concerns me, is what does this do to the community at large? One of the other things that took me, and I believe everybody sitting around this table is the same as me, we talked to citizens in Coaldale, we've talked to groups and organizations as council. I think we're out there, and I think we're doing a half-decent job. Could we do better? There's always those chances. But I know personally, I've taken time out of my holidays to answer questions. I've taken time away from loved ones that I could only see for a short time to answer questions. So you do not have to go through the delegation process to come talk to us. You just need to email, call, or text us, or anything. So, and I know every member has talked to citizens in Coaldale and has brought their concerns to the council table. This is the path that group has chosen. It's not wrong to come to a delegation, not at all. But if they want more than that, there was always options to come sit and talk to us about these concerns. So I don't want anybody in the community thinking we're not able to easily talk to. One thing I kind of want to bring up is the swimming pool. That's something that's always been talked about a little bit. One thing that our council is doing is we're thinking into the future. We don't know exactly the type of pool the community wants. A average indoor pool loses or average $1 million a year. So that's after your revenues and your expenses, you're at a loss for $1 million. you know, right now our tax base is 11% commercial, 89% residential. One of the ways to be able to afford that loss is to bring in more commercial. And that's one thing we're trying to do as a council. So we are making already those steps for that infrastructure that we want to see in the future. But when I go back to my concern about the pause of the school and grant opportunities, are we also pausing the chance of infrastructure we can have in the future? One thing in the last couple months that has come up to me is I've had lots of people approach me, text me, message me, email me, and to say that we're doing a good job. They support us. And I appreciate that. The one thing that scares me, though, is these individuals have told me that they are too scared to say anything on social media. So I want to work together. I want this community to be able to work together and to strive for the best community there is out there. So I think we can do it. We just need cooperation on every side to have proper dialogue and communication on both ends. The one thing I would like to come up with our next strat planning is we talk about our communication. How can we do better as a council, as administration, and as individual people on this, around this table? So that's one thing I would like to be put on that. And I also am in favor of option 1, and I don't think we can make any decisions regarding the municipal inspection and Mr. Mikado's feelings about working here until we've talked to legal experts. So there's my opinion.
Councillor Simpson, Councillor Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'm going to echo much of what Councillor Avery has also stated, that if a lot of what we hear again from Mr. Van Ryan, if he happens to come in from a legal counsel later on, if HR is an issue and these allegations need to be further investigated, I take that extremely seriously. And I think it's something that we have to deal with immediately. And I like the idea that it's council-driven, that it's a councilor investigation. That will have no bearing on a school. So to even put that investigation and, oh, we'll never have a school again, if we investigate that in the same sentence, I think is just wrong. Because I would think that anybody who's looking at financing a school from the province, I think they would pat the council on the back for taking allegations of wrongdoing, for HR issues and allegations very seriously, and I think that they would look at that as a positive, not a negative. I worry about some of the wordings in our CAO's comments here about a significant amount of extra dollars for staff time if we went through a municipal review. The staff time will be no different than if we had our own third party. So let's not worry about extra staff time and stuff. Most of what a municipal review is interviews. They do the work with the interviews. Yes, they're going to ask for some paperwork. Yes, they're going to ask for some background information, but any third party that we were to bring in will be doing exactly the same thing. So to say, well, it'll be $250,000 more than the $150 if we have a municipal review, but it's way less. No, it's not. It's the same price. So let's not try and cloud the waters with some of these numbers here. I'm not saying I'm in favor of municipal review, but if there is some allegations and we have our chat with our legal later on today, and if we think we need to move forward on some HR issues, then that I will take very seriously. Thank you.
Would take exception to what you said earlier. I don't believe any member of council is not in favor of pursuing the HR issue, and I don't think any member of council, they can correct me if I'm wrong, indicated that the school and the HR investigation were tied to the funding. I don't believe I heard that tonight, and I just wanted to dispel that thought right here, right now, that nobody's trying to impede a possible HR investigation and using the funding for a school as an excuse not to proceed. And I think, you know, we pay our staff well, and, you know, they do analysis, and, you know, we can all choose to agree or disagree with the advice that we receive from our staff, but, you know, I think from the perspective of what the thought are involved in some of their dialogue with their peers, they might anticipate that there would be a sort of burden of work, and I guess that's where we can agree to disagree. And I just wanted to harken back to earlier in the meeting where an addition to the agenda was contemplated or proposed to bring in a person during the closed session. And I'm not opposed to, you know, meeting or talking with Mr. Van Ryan per se. My hesitancy was the impulsiveness of it, and more importantly, the procedural aspect of how we quantify that that should be in closed session or not. I'm not sure if I can really say what part of the MGA that falls in that allows us the privilege of closed session or not. So that was my hesitation, but I wanted to clarify that, you know, notwithstanding those hesitations, further questioning by Councillor Avery of Mr. Van Ryan, I don't have any issue with that. So I just wanted to clarify that before we moved on. So we have had some members of, okay, go ahead, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to clarify that too. I think the HR allegations are actually completely separate from the municipal inspection to me, because that is something that we do have to deal with. So that is completely on its own in a way for me too. I'm talking about the municipal inspection, and I think there's other ways around it than to do this and to take a chance of losing that school. That is number one priority for me.
There seems to be consensus with option number one as per the recommendations. Maybe if there's no more dialogue, maybe I would entertain a motion if council so chooses. Councillor Avery? Okay. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Spencer, we are down to item 6.1, town bylaw 786P0902-20. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have many other comments, if I may. Just one point for clarification. I had time to reflect on some of Councillor Holmes' comments regarding density, and I just wanted to clarify that the 8 dwelling units per acre in the draft plan are not directly from the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan. They're from a accompanying document, the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan Efficient Use of Land Compendium. So it is a suggestion that's used often with communities as they adopt these new plans, but it's not directly from the regional plan itself. It's from a partner document.
Any further questions of administration? Councillor Avery?
Just for clarity, your presentation wasn't uploaded with our council minutes that will be put in this evening. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Avery, no. The time it took to prepare the document to the point that staff thought it would be achieving the goals set out for it required that it was prepared and sent to council earlier this afternoon.
Thank you.
So the intent is that it would go up on the council portion of the webpage after this meeting tomorrow morning.
Thanks.
Question through the Spencer on my behalf. How cumbersome would it be for our council or a future council to amend any aspect of this plan if, you know, just for example, if in hindsight we thought that the no driveway on a arterial or major road was what we wanted to stick with? Could you specifically address that issue with quite a bit of expediency going forward?
Excellent question. Thank you, Mayor. The answer to that would be through standard process. Any part of the municipal development plan or the town plan can be amended at any time that council sees fit. So regardless of suggested implementation or review cycle, if it's advertised and brought to council appropriately, any part of this can be adjusted as time goes on. If I may, I just wanted to highlight that there is opportunity, as council is likely aware with any part of the plan as it is today, to adjust operative wording to soften some of the language if council so wishes. So whether that be with the density component or the driveways component, shalls can be turned into shoulds fairly easily. So if that's council's wish, that's achievable.
What's council's wishes then? I get, so we do have the option, I guess. Our options right now are, we could approve second reading and not approve third reading, or we could approve second and third reading, or we could table this and advertise another public hearing for, you know, probably the end of November council meeting, I guess, is what you're potentially saying. Is that right, Spencer?
That's correct. So the next meeting that this could be brought forward at, to be able to advertise twice consecutively in the Sunny South and other methods that we use, would be the November 9th meeting.
And I think Councillor Chapman, you were, Wayne.
Want to ensure clarity on the readings and whether, obviously with amendments, or second reading has to meet with amendments, right, as amended. And then the other question would be the two pending comments could still come after, or do you want, or would that have to happen after second reading even?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, I think if I understand correctly, the question is whether council can amend or require amendments to the bylaw after second reading?
There's two amendments to it, right? So it'd have to receive second reading with amendments.
So I guess you could sponsor second reading as the document is presented, or you could sponsor second reading, if that would be your choice, as amended with turning may into the shall and should type of vernacular if you wanted to. Spencer?
If I may, Mr. Chair, just for clarity's sake, if second reading is granted, then it would have to be clear as to whether a additional public hearing is requested or desired by council, because after second reading is granted, that opportunity is lost if we're following the letter of the MGA.
Like, I'm okay with the second reading. I think we're just waiting for comments, and you know, if there's going to be a couple more ands or shalls or shoulds, can that be amended before third reading, or do you have to have that before second reading then?
Go ahead, Spencer.
Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Chapman, really, if the intent is to wait for additional commentary to come in before choosing to adjust any part of the bylaw or not, it may be most streamlined to advertise for a second hearing, because that information could be considered new information, which then should be able to be considered prior to any additional readings in public session and potentially by members of the community as well.
Well, then all it takes is a motion. Go ahead, Councillor Lloyd.
Well, I think these two agencies have had ample opportunity to reply. If they wanted to reply, I don't really think that we should wait on that. I would be prepared to go with second and third readings. Make that a motion.
So is your motion that you want to sponsor second reading then?
Sure.
As
Yes.
circulated, or with the amendments from may to shall and should?
With the amendments, please.
Okay. So Councillor Lloyd moves for second reading of the bylaw with the amendments as highlighted in the presentation, appropriately from may to shall and should, as outlined there. Is that clear, Spencer, then?
Mayor, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a motion by Councillor Lloyd. Is there any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor and opposed. We have 2 opposed. Councillor Holman, Councillor Avery. So second reading is passed. So. The bylaw has passed second reading as amended, and I would entertain Councillor Simpson, do you support third reading of the amended bylaw? Okay, Councillor Simpson moves that. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and we have 5 in favor and opposed. 2 opposed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Spencer.
Thank you.
Worship, through to Spencer, if I may, if we need to make if any comments require some changes at a later, we can do that amendments at a later date. Is that correct?
Councillor Chapman, yes, sir.
Okay, and then we're on to new business, item 7.1, request for waiver of penalties on property taxes, and Kyle is here to present.
Good evening again. So we received a letter from a resident with 3 roll numbers requesting a waiver of penalties on his property taxes. In the letter, the resident notes payment for taxes owing for the above 3 parcels, numbers 217-131-800, 100001065, and 100001066, which generated via check on Wednesday, September 30th, 2020. This payment was dropped off at the town office October 1st, 2020. Please note that previous tax payments have never been late, and this was an honest oversight on my part. I missed getting to your office by closing yesterday. This is hereby a request for your consideration to waive the past due date penalties 1 day. Thank you for your consideration. Should be noted, the combined tax penalty for late payment on these 3 rural properties is equal to $309.91. And council can either approve or deny the request from the resident. That being said, I'll turn it back to council for discussion.
So it's just a question of, as far as you're aware, has council ever approved any such requests for waiver of penalties?
As far as my previous recollection, there was one previous one last year. I believe, I'm a little fuzzy on the circumstance, but I believe it was due to relate to this in the state of passing of a resident or special circumstances. But other than that, I don't recall any.
During my tenure on council's been quite consistent in its application of these requests in declining them. So with that one exception that Kyle noted for compassionate reasons. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Through to Kyle, so all I'm reading here is, say, midnight of the September 30th would have been the latest you could submit something, and that this letter came in, or the payment came in in the morning. Is that correct? Like that next morning?
Correct. So we do have a drop box that is right next to the front entrance at the town office. So if somebody came in after the town office was closed on the due date, which in this date was September 30th, they could leave a check and payment in the drop box. That would be handled by staff the next morning and would be recorded as received on September 30th. This resident did come in the next day to the town office after the town office was open to make their payment.
Councillor Holm?
Move to deny this request.
We have a motion on the floor by Councillor Holm to deny the request to waive the penalties as requested. Any discussion? Councillor Chapman?
More of a second comment is that we've deferred for 90 days, I think. A few more hours would have been all right, in my opinion.
Any other comment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and there's 6 in favor, I believe, and opposed? 1? Is that my count right? Okay, good. Thank you. And we have 8.1, Main Street sidewalk snow removal update. Okay, Spencer.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'll just note that our Director of Operations couldn't be here for personal circumstances, so I'll be standing in as best I can on this item. Historically, Main Street was cleaned of snow starting at 4 a.m. in order to make sure that that particular street in town was free of snow and able to be traveled on prior to the start of day. That was done with a combination of town staff and contractors if the snow load was significant enough. With the new Main Street design, there's confidence from the Public Works, Parks and Recreation and Roads crews. They've come up with collaboratively come up with a proposed program for cleaning snow from the Main Street area from 2020 forward that would involve those 3 departments coming together at 4 a.m., being able to clean snow off of sidewalks and the street, which actually allows for a quicker turnaround overall, easier removal of snow on the 3 blocks of Main Street in question, and then to move on to other priority routes much sooner than in the past. So with the proposal before council this evening, we would actually be able to get to, say, the perimeters of schoolyards, the sidewalks around schools, much sooner than in the past, meaning we provide better service to those user groups and the community members who have school-aged children and buses and so on and so forth. So this would still require shop owners to clear snow from sidewalks in front of their particular businesses if it's under 4 inches in height or accumulated to under 4 inches in height. After 4 inches in height, the new plan would kick in and all snow would be cleared from sidewalks and the street early in the morning to allow the day to get off on the right foot for the businesses along Main Street. So because it is operational change for that particular area of town, it is worth recognizing there will be some learning from how the specifics work this winter and this snow season, but as I'd mentioned, staff is confident that it will work and it will work well. And so with that, the request is being made of council to approve the pilot program as described for the 2020-2021 snow season, with a debrief coming forward at the end of the snow season to describe how things worked and how they might be able to be improved into the future. And that concludes my comments.
Is there any questions of Spencer? So is there any budgetary impact? Does this cost more or less, or is it just a chicken and egg kind of a thing that has no budgetary impact? Or?
As far as I understand, it would be roughly the same number of staff that would need to be on site doing the snow clearing. There would be a small increase in cost due to shift premiums being paid for anyone who begins work prior to 6 a.m. But that increase would be very, very minimal, less than $100 per snow clearing event type of thing.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm fully confident that the staff will have a good plan and on this project. I'm just curious. 4 inches is a fair amount of snow, and our sidewalks are wider, at least from what I'm seeing downtown. So even with 3 inches, what do they do with that snow? They push it out onto the street, and then the snow plow has to come and pick all that up as well before traffic shows up.
If I may, through the chair to Councillor Chapman, 4 inches, as far as I understand, is our current policy for when our snow clearing kicks in. Anything beyond that, I have to say that I don't have the level of information or level of detail to be able to answer that comprehensively. But we could certainly come back with an answer for you at the next meeting.
Sure. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think the only other thing is that I'm just curious is if we want to wait till next spring to kind of have an evaluation, or you will self-evaluate as the snow flies.
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Chapman, that would be the intent, is to use this winter or this snow season as a learning experience, with the goal always being to provide excellent service, and then to be able to come back with lessons learned in the spring and go over that with council for the following snow season.
Thank you. I'm fully confident that they'll do a great job this winter, and so I'll move to accept for option number 1, which is that council received a report for information, and further that council endorse the Main Street sidewalk snow removal pilot project and request that a debrief be provided to council once feedback on the services gathered from Main Street businesses following the 2021 snow clearing season.
Okay, we have that motion by Councillor Chapman on the floor. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Spencer. Okay, and then we have correspondence. We have item 10.1, Diego's Pizza.
For information.
Okay, any discussion? Councillor Lloyd?
Just for sake of making people aware of it, would it be possible to read it out loud?
I think it's posted in our agenda package, but Councillor Simpson?
I just want to thank Christina for writing this letter and clearing some misinformation that's out there in the public right now.
Thank you very much. So we have a Councillor Avery has made the motion to receive for information. Any other discussion? All in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. Then we have information items. Okay, 11.1 to 11.5. Good news in 11.5 about the lead testing. There's no issues coming forward from there, so that's good. Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Worship. Just looking at the Emergency Advisory Committee stuff, are we going to have a presentation on possible mask bylaw for Coaldale anytime in the future, or is it going to be just resident choice?
Go ahead.
Chair to Councillor Avery, this is something that's discussed regularly with our Director of Emergency Management and Fire Chief. It is something that they are monitoring. They are in contact regularly with AHS. And my direction to them is to reach out and let me know when this should be added to the agenda, if this is something that they feel should be enacted for Coaldale. There has been a spike in cases in Lethbridge County, but it's not in the community of Coaldale. It's in the community of Colehurst. They are aware of the areas within the county and speaking with the health officials where the spread or the spike has occurred. But this is something that they check in regularly. If council would like, you can make a motion to have them come back next council meeting, or if you wish, you can make a resolution for a special council meeting if you want to talk to them sooner.
Councillor Avery.
Worship, so there is cases in Coaldale. So it's not just the county, it's not just Colehurst. We do have active cases in our community, so I would like to get a presentation sooner than later, next council meeting, on what they would recommend. Again, why are we any different than the city of Lethbridge or city of Calgary? We need to do our part in preventing and making sure that we have a safe community. So if we can get it just for next council meeting, that would be great.
So you're making a motion then, is that correct?
The Emergency Service or Emergency Advisory Committee comes back with recommendations at our next council meeting.
When you do that, I was just wondering, would your expectation be that they bring a contemplated bylaw at that same time, or would we hear that presentation and then defer a decision on mask or whatnot until a subsequent meeting, or?
That would be, if their recommendation would be to implement one, I would expect we would have some type of a bylaw to be looking at it that evening as well.
Right. Is that clear enough then for administration?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, good. Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Avery on the floor, and I have, I didn't know who was number one out of the gate, but ladies first, I'll give it to.
Another one of the information items, so.
Okay, Councillor Chapman then?
Yeah, speaking in favor of Councillor Avery's motion, I just wanted to ask if administration through the emergency services or to the director would continue to update the community in terms of protocols and just behavior type requests from the community, that we comply, we respect, and we also try to encourage safety in all levels, that be part of the whole public awareness process. So there's nothing in but I will wait for a report at the end though. But in the meantime, I think whether our newsletter or just communiques out to the community that to ensure that people stay safe.
Well, I think that I congratulate the town team for posting. I think it was Emergency Services that posted a bit of an awareness post on social media during past week and that, and you know, I encourage them to keep their vigilance up on that, because they are informed by what's happening by the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and they I think is really good that they're proactive in doing that. And I wouldn't necessarily, I agree that we need to maybe have this on our agenda so that we're showing the community that we're being, aware of the aspect and whatnot. Be an interesting discussion when it comes forward, because there's certainly lots of different thoughts on these kinds of things and whatnot. I'd be interested in hoping that the administration might come back and say, what all options do we have type thing as well. So, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I would like to see all the options we have too. I know some of the bylaws that are out there, there's many, many, many loopholes actually in them. So it's very hard to enforce a lot of it, and I've found that some of the bylaws have caused some extra hate in this world with people that legitimately cannot wear a mask, and they're exempt from the bylaws. So it's just something that if we do go ahead with it, there has to be a ton of advertising in the positive side. Like there's some people that will not and cannot wear a mask, right? So.
All right, so we have Councillor Avery's motion before us. Is there any other discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and opposed? Okay, we have Councillor Pauls and Councillor Lloyd in opposition. And then Councillor Simpson, you wanted to speak to one of the information items?
Yes, for 11.4, I was wondering if we can put that on our website and also on our social media. I would like the residents of Coaldale to see what we're talking about and be able to see it through the slideshow.
That's a good suggestion. I would just maybe ask Chief McEwen if he might want to supplement that, because I think the complexity of Coaldale in how we work through things, might even add another layer of complexity that the city slideshow didn't contemplate, but, you know. Can we have that motion by Councillor Simpson to instruct that be uploaded onto our town website then? Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Okay. So then we have 11.1, 11.2, 11.3 that are outstanding items for information because we've kind of dealt with the other two. So does anybody care to make a motion to receive those 3 items for information? Councillor Lloyd, all in favor? That's carried. All right. And then we're at the end of the public portion of today's meeting, so I'll ask council if they care to entertain a motion to go into closed session. Councillor Holm, all in favor?